Hey, Dr. Rob, how are ya?
Tammy, good to see you today.
Great to see you. We've got a partial question. I'm
Well, wait,
gonna.
before the question, I
Yes,
want to just point out that you are clearly in your element in the Southwest. You look like Tammy found her background and it
I
looks great.
did. It's the
And
Grand Canyon.
it is, and doesn't it, for those you can see. And here I am in Southern California. And could it look more like Southern California? Let me just show you one more thing. You'll all like this. This is actually another way that Southern California can look. And for those of you who are watching, it can look like this.
That's
Lots of
true.
traffic. But we're going to give you this for today. And let me tell you, our goal here is to answer questions and answer them anonymously with as much respect and dignity as we can, giving you science-based information and information about the world we live in related to sex, love, and addiction. So let's get started.
Okay, so the first one is uh, my husband and I are finally in qualified therapy after spending the last 11 months with a general therapist who did nothing to address my husband's sex, porn addiction, infidelity, aside from concentrating on how I contributed to his acting out for the last 16 years. My husband disclosed that he began acting out 16 years ago because he thought I had an affair with a business associate. While I do acknowledge that I had a close working relationship with this man, as he was my mentor, I never had a romantic sexual feelings or actions towards him, not with any man in our 29 years of marriage. My husband, ironically, has always been jealous, accusatory, possessive towards me. However, this perceived affair isn't something that he ever addressed with me back then. Let's see if she continues this. Uh, nope, it's,
Well, I actually could say something about that.
yes,
Um,
please do.
well, mm, I guess I just wanted to say something about possessive spouses. I think that, when I run into men, they're very, very jealous and possessive. And, I've seen some men stalk, some and women. These are behaviors about people who profoundly fear abandonment and rejection. And if you threaten abandonment, they will hunt you down to your dying day to make sure you don't leave them, even though in real life they may do all kinds of things that you think, oh my God, why would I want to live with this person? But then when you threaten abandonment or leaving, they freak out. So what else do I want to say about this? I'm not sure how to continue with that question.
Well, this is what I recall. So we're going to go with what I recall from the rest of the question.
Okay,
So
I like
he is willing to forgive her for her transgression that she didn't really have. He's talked to their adult children about this, but he's blaming her infidelity that she didn't have on why he went out and became a sex addict.
So I'm not sure how to answer the question. I think that spouses are given all kinds of reasons why it's their fault that I cheat, that I lie, that I have affairs, I do drugs, whatever it is always your fault. And you have to understand as a spouse, it's not about being a woman or a man, it's just you are the most convenient place for me to put responsibility for my behavior, since I don't want to put responsibility on myself. If I put responsibility on myself for my behavior, I'd have to look at it and possibly change it. But as long as it's your fault, I don't have to take any responsibility. But let me tell all of you spouses in the room why you are not responsible. And I don't care if you nag us or complain to us or gain 50 pounds or aren't having sex with us, because you know what? You can do all those things, and I can take up golf. I can go, get my hair cut if I had any. There are many choices I can make when I'm upset with and angry and feel let down by a spouse than going out and cheating. My decision to go out and cheat or turn to porn, that's my decision, and that's on me. So I just want every spouse in the room to hear that, and including this person, I don't care if he was right and you had the affair, even if he's right. His decision to go off and say, well, I'm going to do what I want because you did that, or I think you did that, is all on him. And I would say to you that his decision to do it and blame you is very convenient, because even though he doesn't know the truth, he now has an excuse for what he did. And this is all a bunch of BS, and you know that. So I really encourage you confronting this very head on, and I certainly would encourage I would be very upset about somebody talking to my kids, because especially with untruths. I'm guessing, I don't know your situation, but my guess would be that's something like damage control, which means I'm afraid that this is going to come out, what I've been doing, and so let me get to the kids before the mom does and make sure that they're on my side. And that's really icky. Even if he thinks it's right, even if he thinks you had the affair, it's really icky. And meanwhile, he hasn't come to you at all. So there is a problem in your marriage. And it's certainly one of communication and his willingness, if not yours, to be more open and direct with each other. I worry, though, if you were, that you might find you don't have a marriage. And that's my fear, is if we really started talking about this stuff, it would become much more clear very quickly how little respect this man has for you. And so maybe it's better not to talk about it. But you need to talk about it.
Do you feel the addict has control over his behavior the first time they act out with a partner, or do you think they're already hijacked?
Well, I think that the foundation for addiction is laid early in life, and that can show up in a lot of different ways. You know, it could show up with alcohol or gaming or gambling or sex. I do think that once a sex addict finds their groove, like, oh, wow, anonymous sex with women who I hook up on the apps, that's my thing, they're likely to keep repeating it over and over again. And I don't think that they're hijacked on the first time, but I think we notice, like, oh, I got away with that. Oh, that was easy. Oh, that was fun. Oh, that made me feel better. You know, we notice all of it. And if it really served us in the sense of the way it serves addicts, which is helped us escape emotionally, helped us disappear emotionally, helped us feel better emotionally by losing ourselves in sexual fantasy and sexual behavior, then we are going to keep returning to that in order to feel better over and over. Sex addicts don't turn to the sex because it's hot, exciting sex. It may or may not be. We turn to the sex as a means of escape, emotional stability, and to not feel whatever it is we're feeling in the same way that someone picks up a bottle and goes like that.
So the next question is, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to: diet, exercise, meetings, meditation, going to meetups, meet new female acquaintances, working on myself. This is a female. Working on myself, but I can't stop fantasizing about my ex, who I would describe as a 7-month fantasy relationship where I saw him only every other weekend, most likely just for sex. I just can't seem to feel better and have nightmares about him, like when I quit drinking and had user dreams 6 years ago. How do I get relief? And she adds, it's been 3 months since he ended via text message.
You know, unresolved relationships are a tough one, because often we're left thinking, what did I do wrong? How could I have done this differently? You know, especially if someone's been close to us and fed our needs, even if it wasn't real. So let me try to explain this in a different way. One of the problems with those of us who choose unhealthy partners, love addicts, people who find the wrong person, and it sounds like this person was the wrong person for you because he's a poor communicator, he let you down, he doesn't, you know, he's not obviously someone who might be available to you emotionally, but nonetheless, you're really excited about the possibility, you know, he is the fantasy about this man is your addiction. The fantasy about what this relationship could be, every time you fall into pain or stress or loneliness, you turn to your drug, which is fantasizing about him. So I don't think that there's any way to stop taking your drug in that way, but I think there are things you can do. For example, if you were in program or in 12-step, or you had a therapist, you had support, or you were in one of our support groups, which are free, you know, you could call somebody and say, hey, I'm obsessing about him again. And they'll say, why don't we have a chat? And hey, let's watch a Netflix together. Let me come over. You know, by engaging with a couple, left to our own devices, it's very difficult to put down obsession. It's very hard to not follow through on the obsession, even in your thinking. But what is much easier is, you know, when I start thinking about this, I'm going to call someone and tell them. I'm going to get support, because I know it's not good for me to obsess about this. And I've talked to other people who support me, and they know it isn't either. There is one other thought for you. You know, I've learned over the years, I am a sex addict, right? So when I have the desire to just disappear and be sexual, and don't think that's gone away because I've worked on myself for 30 years, it will always be there. It is a brain injury from early life, in my opinion. So I will always defer under stress, or when anxious or having a hard time. My brain will just say, go have sex with strangers, or whatever it says. But you have to understand that that does not mean we have to go do it. So if you are feeling like you're longing for him and thinking about him and worrying about him, and I would say you're probably feeling needful, and you're probably needing a lot of the things that he brought to you. Maybe not in the way he brought them. You know, he brought them in terms of sex, but maybe you want to feel appreciated, valued, comforted, held, supported. Well, think about what you need when you think about him, and where can you get those needs met? Maybe not in exactly the same way, but some of those needs met without him. And I think if you have people to turn to and support for yourself and you're not sitting alone with this, it's going to be a lot easier. By the way, using dreams, I think, are always a sign that something's going away. In my experience, using dreams always meant, oh my God, my unconscious is finally getting this. I can't do this, and my unconscious is fighting back. So oftentimes I think people see using dreams as, oh my God, it means I'm headed right back down there. My experience is using dreams as your brain's way of letting go. So I would say you're on the right path, but not getting enough support and trying to handle this too much on your own.
Oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't heard that about user dreams or even thought of it that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does make sense that if you're working on something subconsciously, that it's
not only that, Tammy, but people, we're like, we don't want to slip. We really want to get, and of course our fears are, I'm going to just fall flat on my face. I'm going to call this person. I'm going to be right back where I was. And so our brain picks up with that. And it's good to wake up and say, oh, good, thank goodness I didn't do that. But don't think that means you're going to go do it. It simply means you're trying to figure all this out when you're sleeping.
So the next one is, I'm the one who asked earlier about making admissions about thoughts of sex. I want to make her feel safe by letting her know what I'm up to during the day. For instance, I could send an update of my location every hour or so. However, in one breath, she will say she doesn't really care to know and that I can just go do whatever I want to let her know. Then say a message in an hour, it's too annoying. Then also say I could go and have sex within an hour. I'm finding it hard to know how to let her feel safe without annoying her.
Okay, so I think I know where your partner is at because I've worked with a few partners. And what I would say is there's probably nothing you can do or say that's going to make her feel better. So what you need to do or say, or what you need to do is whatever you need to do to heal. Go to your therapy, go to your meetings, talk to your sponsor, be honest with her. And whatever you need to do with her, do with her. But your job is not to make her happy. Your job is not to convince her that you're working on yourself. You can only do what you can do. So what I would say to someone like that is, sweetheart, I'm going to leave my phone on Find Your Phone, which I can do with an Apple phone. I'm sure there are other ways with other phones. Anytime your wife might want to find out where you are, she can look. And you have that on, and she can find you all day long. And anytime she wants, I would not report into her. I would say whenever she's feeling like she wants to find out where you are, she can do that. And hopefully you're not going to be anywhere where you shouldn't be, and you're going to be fine with her calling and saying, what are you doing on 33rd and Broadway? And you're going to say, I'm getting a sandwich. And you'll take a picture of the sandwich, and you guys will move on. In my experience, spouses in this situation are often looking to reestablish trust. But it looks like nothing we do is trustworthy. It feels that way to them because they're so conflicted, but they really are trying to regain trust. But they don't believe anything we say, right? Because you've been lying. So if you say, well, I'll tell you this, I'll do this for you, she's like, well, yeah, thanks, but that's been a lie before. So I would ask her to set her own agenda about how she would feel most comfortable keeping up with what you're doing in the early stages so that she can begin to regain some trust. I would also suggest just to any partner who's in early recovery, like it sounds like this couple is, don't let your partner down. And if you around anything, and if you do, own it. So if you forget to take out the garbage, don't race out, take out the garbage and say, oh, I never forgot. It was out, you just missed it. Tell them you forgot. If you're going to be late, call them and tell them you're going to be late. Don't let yourself get into the habit of thinking, oh, well, she will understand, or understanding and excuses are gone now because you no longer are trustworthy. So you have to be accountable to everything now. Your word matters a lot more than it ever did, and your actions matter even more. You cannot change what she feels. And I just said last week to a gentleman, if you look for your happiness in recovery, in whether your wife is smiling or not, you will never find it. We have a saying in AA and other reports of recovery, which is, don't turn your spouse into your higher power. Don't turn anybody, in other words, if you're going to seek help and try to heal, you can't base that help and healing on your spouse's happiness or lack of happiness. You have to base it on your own ability to live within your boundaries and feel good about yourself and the relationships you have supporting you. Of course you want to heal things with your spouse, but she may not be ready, and she may not be ready for a while. I did write a book about this, I will tell you, called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship-saving guide for men caught cheating, because I have worked with men forever. It seems. It's only been 25 years, but it feels like forever. And my most common experience with men who cheat is that they don't know how to make it up to their spouses. We think that candy flowers and at least 60 or 90 days of I'm sorries should mean they're going to get over it. And then when we see that angry face on the 91st day, we're like, hey, I've been working on this for 90 days. I haven't cheated on you in 90 days. What's the problem? And, my guys in my program think I'm doing great. My sponsor and my therapist think I'm doing great. Why don't you? And the answer is because you cheated on her. And it's not her job to think you're doing great or doing whatever or validate any of your work on yourself. It is your spouse's job to hate you, to question whether she wants to be with you, and wonder whether anything that's ever happened in your relationship is true. That's her job. And when she's done with that job, she will make a decision. How do I feel about moving forward with this relationship or not? And the only thing she will have to inform her is your actions and your words now. So let your words matter, make your behavior matter even more, and don't try to convince her of anything. Just suit up and show up for what you need to suit up and show up for, and she'll see the change in you over time. Tammy, you don't have any input tonight. What's up?
Well, I'm taking it all in. I'm going like, yep, I agree. It's I do.
Beauty of the Grand Canyon that just
it is. I'm so zen. Yeah. I agree. It really is your actions, and it just takes time. It's like you guys are in a difficult spot, and your needs are different, and it's just hard. And it's hard, like you said, it's rebuilding trust, and it takes a long time, and it takes constantly showing up. And like you said, take out the trash, do what you say and say what you do. Mean it. So
very simple. I'm gonna let the dog out, but I'm right here.
Okay. So the next question is, I'm trying to figure out if you're saying that addicts act out because it's fun and we got away with it, all in quotes, or we're trying to numb horrendous trauma.
Yes. We did it because it was fun and we got away with it, and because we're trying to numb feelings we don't know how to tolerate, experiences we don't know how to handle, emotions that are unusual or difficult. And it's both things are true. We have found that's what makes it an addiction, is you found a pleasurable way to repeatedly disappear emotionally. If you were not having pleasure, if you were escaping emotionally by washing your hands or checking the stove, that would be a compulsion, something you were doing over and over again, but it wasn't fun, so you wouldn't want to do it on its own, but because it alleviates anxiety, you keep doing it. Well, addictions alleviate anxiety, stress, and trauma too, but they do it through pleasure. And by the way, that's when people who love us get really confused, because I thought you loved me while you're out having pleasure with other people. Well, it's because I don't know how to tolerate what I'm feeling, and I can't be intimate with you, so I have to run somewhere else to feel better. And that's not an excuse that spouses like, but it's kind of the truth.
Well, and I think it might have been fun, initially or along the way, or there's occasionally fun, but I think it's also you're chasing the fun that you think, you remember having that fun this time. So even if these times, and you kind of said that earlier too, it's like, even if it's not fun this time, it could be next time, so there is that. But yeah, a lot of it is just numbing out, escaping. I don't know how to handle the situation. So, it's like you said too, it's alcoholism isn't about because this kind of alcohol tastes so amazing, the entire drink and all that, is because I want to not feel. I want to escape. Well, I just want to not feel. And so, if I get completely trashed, then I won't feel. So
I am sad about this next question. I peeked ahead, Tammy. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, it's always good. So
this is a tough question.
My porn addict husband and I are in the middle of a divorce proceedings initiated by him, and he's agreed for me to have sole physical and legal custody. I fought for this not to alienate him, but because it's the most practical way to go, relocating, etc. I also absolutely and truly want him to be part of the baby's life, 10 months young. I try to create opportunities for them to spend time together. We still live in the same house, but feel that it is just blah, flat about it. I could be judging. He doesn't play with her much. It's not too affectionate, seems distant, withdrawn in general. He gives all these reasons. I don't want to spoil her too much by caring. It's hard to put her to sleep now because you've been breastfeeding her to sleep. Time to put her to bed. She looks sleepy, etc. It's hard not to judge him. Is it even worth me encouraging her to be close to him? My fear is when the divorce is final and we've actually separated, he will not initiate contact at all. All and even blame me for that. Sorry. So
Tammy, can you say something about how much control you think we can have about other people's behaviors and choices?
Zero. That's what the Serenity Prayer is about. All I can do is take care of my actions and reactions. I can't control anybody else.
This woman, she thinks in what she's saying that if she tries harder or does it differently, or maybe she hadn't initiated divorce as quickly, or whatever it is, that somehow her husband would be more caring, more loving, and more engaged with her child. Do you think she really has influence? Do you believe she has influence on how this man, whether he chooses to interact with his baby or not?
No, and my big takeaway with this is my porn addict husband. It doesn't say my porn addict husband in recovery. And so I couldn't
Mhm.
help but think I'm still actively engaged in my porn, and a baby will take my time away from this addiction that I don't have any way away from.
And I would also say, I mean, I don't know, I don't know this man. I don't know what you're going through, but I do know most people with little babies. And even if they're in trauma and stress, you can't walk by that little kid without saying, oh my God, I want to pick her up and she's so cute and he's so this, and it's human nature. So and especially if it's his child. So even if you had an intellectual feeling going on or thought or about your anger, you can't pass your own child by and ignore them unless there's something really challenged about you. I don't care what's going on with the two of you. Why won't this man love and play with? Now, maybe he has trauma in this area. Maybe no one played with him. Maybe, I'm kind of glad in a way that you're not going to be together, because I'd really like to see this child have a really active father who thinks that he or she is just the most important thing since sliced bread. And oh my God, you got a 10-month-old. Like, there's nothing more important than both parents thinking that child is like a gift from God, as it is. So I don't know anyone who, unless they're in so much grief and dysfunction that they can't function and can't work and get out of bed and they're that kind of depressed, I don't see people who just can't take joy in their young children because they're fighting or might divorce. I find that unusual, and I am concerned about it for him, but I don't think that you can make any commitments that, or even thoughts that your behavior or how you teach him or relate him to the child is going to keep them bonded. That's either going to be, he's either going to take his responsibility as a dad in a way that has meaning to him, or he's not. And I would, however, discuss this with him. I would say to him, look, I've noticed that you seem distant. I've noticed you have all these reasons. I'm telling you, none of them are valid. You can play with the baby, you can hold the baby. So what is keeping you from doing that? And, I'm hurt and sad. I want you to be an active dad despite your choice to leave. And, I think he needs to hear all of this. And if he can't hear it, write it down and send it to him. But I think you need to say to him, as a father, I expect more from you, not just for me, but for our child. And I want to know if you're able to deliver that or not. I will say this, if you're moving away, I can imagine that I would have a really hard time, period. And I might avoid getting closer because getting closer just feels like the hurt I'm going to feel when my baby is gone. And so I don't know about that part, because you talk about relocating. And that might be a reason why I might choose to detach, because I'm going to lose this in the way that I have it, and it's going to hurt more than I want. But honestly, this is something, look, couples going together after divorce need to parent. There are lots of people who go to therapy to figure out how to co-parent. And if this is an issue going on for the two of you and you're not getting answers from him that you want to get, and maybe he's depressed, maybe there's other things going on with him, but it does not sound healthy. No.
She adds that he's in denial and doesn't think he has a porn addiction. So
Listen, if he's willing to let you and this beautiful young child go for porn or to have his own way with what he wants to do, I'm not sure what a great father he would be anyway. And I'm so sorry to say that.
yeah, but and you're moving away, and hopefully you find connections. Even it's not like you have to run out and marry somebody else, but there will be people that will be important in her life that will make healthy connections, and you will be a great mom, and you will help her find those connections so she is supported. So,
and maybe the best thing that's ever could happen to you is this man deciding to move on. I don't know, but you are right to think the most important thing here is our child and her getting as much as she can from everyone around her. That is the right thing and the most important thing.
So I have been practicing sexual sobriety for over a year now. I have had a few slips along the way and have been sober about 70% of the past year. However, I'm currently in a relapse, which has been an off and on for the last 5 weeks. I feel like I have been complacent because acting out hasn't been so bad. It hasn't made me feel terrible like it usually does, but I also want to get back on the sobriety train. What's the next best step?
Well, that's interesting. Tammy, did you get sober because when you drank, it made you feel so bad about yourself, and so you didn't want to feel bad about yourself, so you stopped drinking? Or did you stop drinking because, let me try this again. You and I may not be the right question, Buzz. Do you think, let me try this on Tammy. Do you think that feeling bad about something is going to stop my behavior?
No, it actually, because I felt bad, I kept I kept in the spiral because I couldn't deal with it feeling bad. So,
So when I'm acting out, I'm disappointing myself. I'm letting myself
yes,
down, and then
shame, guilt.
right, and then my soothing for acting out and feeling worse is more of the same. So here's so I have to say I noticed, and you, sir, I don't know you at all, but I just want to say I noticed the word practicing, and I notice words. It's just what I do. I don't think sobriety is something you practice. I think it's something you commit to and you embrace and you put your whole life behind. So it may well be, it sounds, the word practicing sounds a little bit like, excuse my word, diddling. Like, oh, I'm going to play a little bit with sobriety, but I'm going to see which, how about getting serious about it? How about devoting 3 nights a week and 2 weekdays to it? How about doing every step, going to every meeting? Why don't you get more serious about, and by the way, when I mean to get more serious, it's about spending more time with recovering people and getting their direction, advice, and support. And if you're slipping on a regular basis, you should be raising your hand and saying, I am not able to get sober and I need help. Because you sort of say, like, I want to get back on the train. What's my next best step? It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with you and other people. You know what the next best step is. Go back to that sponsor, go to more meetings, get a therapist, figure out what is derailing you and start working on it. What I really appreciate about your email, though, is you define a slip from a relapse, and I appreciate that. Slips are occasional returns to unwanted behavior that can be corrected by telling everyone about them and getting a lot of support. Relapses are behavior what you've gone back into and you haven't told anyone about it, and it's going on and on and on, and you're getting away with it and you're in trouble. Let me use this for a short advertising moment. 2 things to the folks of you to those of you who are here, 3 things actually. Number 1, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there is a podcast that I do, got about 60 some odd podcasts. We are a top 10 addiction podcast in the United States. The focus is intimacy, love, relationships, sex, and addiction. And I have experts from all over the world talking to me about these issues, fidelity, infidelity, repairing relationship, all of that. Tammy will put the podcast in the chat if any of you are interested, but remember, podcasts are free. So if you're looking for support at any time or you want information, there's a ton of information there, and I hope you're able to make use of it. And the other thing I want to tell you is that we do run an active treatment center. It's called Seeking Integrity, and we do both workshops and intensive treatment for sex addicts and partners. If we can be of help to you, or you're feeling despairing, like I'm trying all this stuff and it's not working, or I'm trying all this stuff and it's not working for my family, what I think we're particularly good at is finding out what's not working and making it work. It's up to the person who sees us for treatment to make it work, but we can sure understand what it is. And I find so many people coming into treatment confused about trauma, about therapy, about addiction, like they just don't know which way to turn and they can't get it together. And that's why we're here. So if you want more information about that, that's seekingintegrity.com. Thank you.
And I added that to the chat too. So, and you briefly touched on the couples workshop. So I'm going to elaborate on that just a tiny bit. So Paul Hartman, who's been doing couples workshops for decades and does an amazing job with them, is offering those on a Friday afternoon through a Sunday afternoon in the Los Angeles office. The next one will be September 20th through 22nd. And then the dates for the October one will be October 18th through 20th. So both of those are posted on the website. There's here's what you can expect from the workshop, so you can see what, if what you're looking for aligns with that. But he does a great job, and it's I think a relatively affordable option for getting really intense support around some couples issues. So.
And let me say one more thing about that. One of my goals of the couples workshop, because Tammy and I worked on a long, hard time and has got it running, is that our hope is that some people who go through treatment will finish up by going to the workshop or start with the workshop so that the couples issues can be established and clarified. I know you partners a lot of times feel like you're left out of treatment, and I understand that. And over the years when I've worked in different hospitals and treatment centers, we've tried all kinds of things. We've done week workshops, family weeks, all kinds of things. And really the reality is the best work that we can do is to get you in the room and get you working with your partner. And it's often not something that we can do with 5 other guys around who are also in treatment. So if couples are coming in, multi-couples workshops are amazing, and you learn so much from each other. So thanks, Tammy, for mentioning that, and thanks for helping get him started.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, somebody else mentions relapse. One of the things that I think Seeking Integrity Los Angeles is really great at, is helping people who have had some periods of sobriety and then relapse. And it's often there's a pattern to it, and they can help identify that. But, sometimes it just is, I can't quite get, into solid foundation of recovery. So if you really are serious about wanting to make that change, I'd invite you to consider that. So the men that come through the program, I think by and large,
some of them might be online tonight. By the way, some of what you might want to know, guys, is that when we do treatment, we hope that you're going to be here before treatment, during treatment, after treatment. We hope your spouses, all of this online stuff that we created is not just for the general public. It's for people who are also going through programs that we're running so they can stay in a constant contact with us and the work. So this is my theory, is if you stay in touch with us all the way through, you come to these groups and stuff even after you've done with treatment, you probably will stay sober longer because you're going to be in contact with treatment even though you've left us physically. And that's sort of the plan. We got stuff down there.
We do. So the next question is, can sexual addiction result from emotional immaturity?
I think cheating emerges from emotional insecurity. I wrote a book on it. When I wrote Out of the Doghouse, it's a book for men who cheat, not necessarily sex addicts. So I had to figure out what is wrong with men who cheat. Like, what is that really about? And, do I want to call it pathology? I don't think so. I know spouses want to call it pathology, but I would call it immaturity. So let me say what immaturity is for a person with sexual and intimacy problems. When healthy people, if Tam and I were in a relationship, we're not, but if we were, if I went out of town on business or something, I would have Tammy in my mind. Literally, if I thought, oh, that woman's cute, or I might do this or that, I think, oh yeah, but Tammy's important to me. She's in my mind, and I don't want to do that because I don't want to hurt her. That's kind of a mature way of looking at things. I go out in the world and I'm interested in other things in my marriage, but I always keep in mind my partner, what they would feel, what it would mean to them, what would it mean for us. So if you're someone who can go around the world and go to strip clubs and all that kind of stuff and keep your partner out of mind, and you're not a sex addict, I would say that's really immature in the sense that you feel like you can go off and do whatever you want to do and then only have your partner in mind when you're with them. And that's not a very mature way to conduct a relationship. My friend Stan Tatkin, who you'll hear on the Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast, when Dr. Tatkin talks about relationships, he talks about how important it is that the greatest need of the couple and our greatest focus can't be what I need and I want and what you need and what you want. It has to be what is best for our relationship. And I think the mature person who's not having affairs and fooling around all over the place, even if they're not a sex addict, is thinking, I've got this partner in mind, they're important to me and I don't want to hurt them when they're with them and when they're not. And that to me is a kind of maturity that I would want in a spouse and that I would look for in a sex addict that is growing beyond their own needs and wants into a place of incorporating their spouse. So no, I don't think that emotional immaturity creates sex addiction. I think emotional immaturity creates relationship problems and people get hurt and, it's time to grow up if you don't want to disappoint and let people down. But compulsive behavior and addictive behavior comes out of deeper emotional issues.
So the next question, I had full intercourse aged 11 with an adult woman. I never told anyone until I told my wife 10 days ago. I actively sought sex from then on. Could this have had any influence on my cheating behavior?
So I want to be careful as how I talk about this. I think that, look, let me try this on you. If you said to me, and I just want to say this to you just to say it, and I want to read it exactly as Tammy just read that question. So I'm going to say that let's say your name is Suzanne and not a man, because I have a feeling this is a man. And if you said, my name is Susie, and when I was 11, an adult man had sex with me, just that sentence, what would you say? An 11-year-old having sex, 11-year-old female having sex with an adult male. I think they would go to jail. Guess what? That woman who had sex with you today would go to jail too. It doesn't matter the gender. I'm not going to call it names. I'm not going to call it. I'll simply say to you, I think you understand why adults of any gender will go to jail when being sexual with an 11-year-old. The answer is it affects that child for life. It affects that child for life. And so you're absolutely right to say, does this have anything to do with sex addiction? Absolutely. It has everything to do with it. I will say this to you, and it's something to think about also, that the kid that the babysitter or the older woman or man picks out as a victim is often someone who has other issues going on, where they're the more vulnerable kid. They're the kid who's not going to ask for help. They're the kid who is easy to pick on. They're the kid who isn't going to speak out. And so it's not unusual. I mean, something I would ask you to consider is, certainly without question, that kind of abuse that you describe will influence your sexuality the rest of your life. But I would also question whether this woman in some way saw you as being vulnerable in a way she could take advantage of. And why were you vulnerable in a way? Because other kids, like kids who are going to say, don't do that to me, and I'll tell mom, you know, they generally aren't the ones who get molested. It's the kid who's going to say, who's not going to say anything, or who's going to be scared enough to, you know. So how did you get intimidated into not saying anything until, I mean, how did you imagine not saying to your wife until a week ago? And who else have you talked about it with? And did you recognize it as abuse as a child? And how did your family handle it, or not? Or did you feel you couldn't tell them? Were you proud of this and thought, oh, I'm a stud at 11? I think you're going to need to revisit that, because if it was a girl and she was 11, you wouldn't say that. So on every level, I think this is very meaningful, very important. I'm glad you're talking about it. I hope you take this to therapy and you take this to your sponsor. And, you know, this is a big piece, and I wouldn't ignore it, and I wouldn't slough it off. I would pay a lot of attention to this. So I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking, I never told anyone, meaning there was no one safe to tell. I mean, so it's been a held secret for a long time.
Even if you thought it was exciting and fun and it didn't hurt you, it's still a held secret. So anyway, there's much more to say about that, but let's keep moving.
Okay. Is it typical to have problems committing for a porn addict? I never had a committed relationship, and the idea to commit to recovery is also really scary. How do you get over the fear of commitment?
Well, I know the answer to that. So two things. Number one, by definition, addicts avoid commitment. I don't think, even though I got through college, I don't think I ever committed to anything my whole life that wasn't for me, that I wanted to do. I don't know how I got half the things accomplished in my life up to 20 that I did, because honestly, nothing meant much to me except pursuing sex. So I think that trying to keep your distance, trying to not get too tied down, trying to not feel pulled into a relationship are typical for all sex addicts, not just porn addicts, because we are intimacy avoidant. This problem of compulsive sexual behavior is an intimacy problem. We choose situations where we're not committed and we are distant from people, and we can run away, and we don't have to feel tied down for our relationships. So the other answer to how to get over, so that's just a little bit about, what I'm saying is validating you. You're going to be afraid of commitment. That's typical for all addicts. But there's this little thing we say in 12-step programs and in recovery. We say one day at a time. You do not have to commit to recovery for the rest of your life. You just have to say, I'm going to go to a meeting today. I'm going to do my best today. I'm going to hope that tomorrow morning I wake up and want to work on this again. But I might wake up tomorrow morning and just give it all up, and that might happen. But for today. And that's how you get through it, one day at a time. And then after a while, it's like, oh, well, it's been a couple of months since I've done that, and I could probably get away with another month. And that's how you get time, one day at a time. If you say to yourself, I'm never going to do this the rest of my life, forget it. You might as well just start. If you say for today, you're in much better shape.
Yeah, I so agree. I still do the just for today, now I've had enough 24 hours that I actually, kind of go, well, I'm probably going to be okay tomorrow, but I don't take it for granted. I never say I'm recovered. And that always and never was horrible for me, particularly at the beginning. It was the drama, oh, never, oh, always, and I couldn't handle that. So and I had people that helped me break it down even smaller chunks. It's like, if I'm really struggling, can I get through the next 5 minutes? Probably. Okay. So it really was breaking it down until, I had some traction in there. So
I think that recovery, and what we're saying to you, is like building a muscle. You have to regularly push yourself to connection and commitment until it feels comfortable. Now, let me say one more thing. I do not think a commitment to a relationship is one day at a time. Obviously, there
Agreed.
are longer-term commitments that you're making. But when you say to your partner, but in relation to your addiction and your relationship, You can't tell your partner you're going to be sober 3 years from now. You can't tell your partner you're going to be sober 3 weeks from now, but you can tell them that at one day at a time, you are choosing to do this. So when you say get over fear of commitment of dating and relationships, listen, I don't recommend that the person who wrote this gets married tomorrow. I think you need to tolerate dating. I think you need to tolerate intimacy. You need to tolerate monogamous dating. I think you need to, there are many, many steps to getting to commitment. And it starts with dating. And so I wouldn't worry so much about the end point. How am I ever going to commit to someone for 20 years? I'd be more like, how do I get to know people and find someone I might be interested in committing to in a healthy way once I've put down the porn? And that's a different question and has probably a better good answer.
Well, and you mentioned that, sex addiction is an intimacy disorder, but you and I talked just the other day that we think all addiction is an intimacy disorder because whatever behavior we're using, we're keeping ourselves away from truly attaching and connecting with people. So when this person is sharing that they've never had a committed relationship, what you talked about is like, okay, I'm going to commit to at least 3 dates with somebody or something like that. So it isn't just like the first date and you go, oh, they're no good. So
and let me add to that. We have a little saying in recovery: if you've never been in a relationship, you don't know how to do it. Buy a plant. If you can be accountable to the plant, water the plant, feed the plant lives. Get a cat, get a dog. If you can keep in that relationship, nurturing it, showing up for that animal, being available, then you might be ready to date. In other words, you have to learn commitment. Maybe not with a person. You might start with other commitments, like to a 12-step program or to a therapist. Tammy, can I read something that someone wrote just because it touched me?
Well, can we, but hang on just one second, because it said this person is not interested in dating or marriage, so that is not a problem, because you said don't get married tomorrow. But I'm like, right. I'd like you to explore why you're not interested in, any of that, because Dr. Rob has shared before, it's like we're intended to be connected with other people. So if it's not in a dating relationship, then, how are you connecting with other people? We're glad you're here. We love that. But how are you connecting with people in general? So maybe even not being interested in dating, it's like then join the book club or the hiking club.
I have a really good thing to say about all this.
Okay, please do.
Like this. In AA, one of the first things they say to people who have trouble committing is take a job, take some responsibility. So maybe what you could do is go to a 12-step meeting and say, I'd like to bring the books every week, or I'd like to help keep the accounts, or I'd like to, help run this meeting. And those were some of the first commitments I made to myself, was just showing up on every Tuesday night to collect the money or bring out the coffee, but I was committed and I had to do it, and people were waiting on me and they expected me to be there, and it was important. That actual little commitment was the beginning of being able to commit to relationships. Hey, okay. Tammy, can I read this now?
Yes, now you can read it.
Okay, I was really touched. So, we don't get this feedback very often. So someone said, I'm not going to say who it is, I attended the first of the Seeking Integrity workshops. It was extremely valuable and life-changing. Thank you so much. It's taken a month of work for both my wife, with our CSAT and trauma specialist, and being an AA, and I see all of the same. But we've been able to come back together after months of individual work and help from the recovery community. Healing and change has taken time, but it's possible. So thank you. Thanks, Tammy. I just had to read that. Make me happy. No. It's about the workshop, and that made me happy.
Yeah. Well, it's actually about the treatment. So it's about Seeking Integrity treatment program. So Great. It's awesome.
We appreciate that.
So, and then somebody commented, Mom, who died several years ago, 35 years of sobriety, used to say when she was feeling really shitty, if I feel this shitty tomorrow, I'm going to drink again. And by the next day, she didn't feel shitty. So, and that's.
That's important, because it's all, when we say one day at a time, we're kind of tricking ourselves. We're kind of saying, if you really want to go do that, you can do that tomorrow, but for today, you're not going to do it. And then when you get to tomorrow, like, So that's how we kind of trick ourselves into it.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like drinking or doing whatever is only going to complicate and make everything worse. If I can think it through, that's the trick. Is can I think through what's going to happen? Am I going to really feel better? No, I'm going to have a temporary reprieve, and then I'm going to have a worse mess to clean up. And oh my gosh, I just don't want to deal with that. So. Okay, so the next one, a follow-up question, is it even possible that he's giving his best, but his best is just withdrawn naturally, or am I expecting way too much from an active addict? I think this is the porn addict with the 10-month-old, but I'm not 100% because it's anonymous.
So again, we're not here to give direct advice or feedback or therapy, but I just, as a mother, if I were a mother and my husband or my partner was not engaging with my child, I would be deeply upset about that. And I would, and so this couldn't possibly be about you, and it certainly couldn't be about the 10-month-old. So I really think this is about him, and I don't honestly understand it. I can't imagine a man who wouldn't celebrate his child. So I don't even understand that, but it does seem like a lot of trouble and unhappiness to me.
Yeah, well, and at some point, if you're in denial and you're being confronted with, there's an assessment on the sexandrelationshiphealing.com website. You can go take the little assessment and you can go, yes, that too. And so you can kind of go, oh, wait, I have a problem. But, if being confronted with information and still is in denial, I mean, that's entrenched, and because there's ways out. And if somebody goes, this isn't who I want to be, I do have a daughter, I do want to connect, there are ways out, there's hands up. You can get help to have things different.
I also would suggest to you, and I don't know anything about your situation, but people who are withdrawn and say they don't have a problem and are leaving and all of that stuff, it strikes me that there may be more going on than you realize. Maybe he's going somewhere to something, I don't know. A lot of people that I work with in addiction, I used to say this, I don't know if you know this, Tammy, all the time with new clients, especially the ones who would work 70 hours a week and, they were going to get this big job, everything out there was important to them, but they couldn't get sober. And I often will say to a client, seems to me like you feel like you're running after something and you're going to find it and it's out there somewhere. But actually, when I listen to your story, it feels more to me like you're running from something. And that's what I hear with the man you're living with, is that he is not able to stay in one place for you and your child. And I just think you can't, as hard as that is to take, you can't put that on you.
Well, and I know you've experienced this, and you've shared this before too, where people years or decades down the road are all of a sudden going, oh, I gave up a lot, and had I gotten into recovery, I wouldn't have lost my family. I wouldn't have lost all of that, but they just weren't ready. So unfortunately, sometimes people are just not ready to get the help that can change things.
And, I would also say that maybe it's possible that this man doesn't know what he has. Because I think that a lot of men, sadly, under pressure or when they're young, might run, and 5 or 10 years later look back and say, oh my God, that person loved me. Oh my God, that was a real home. Oh my God, I could have had a relationship with my child, and it's too late. And I just felt a lot of grief for those men, because you know what this man is missing out on, but he may not know or may not care.
So we're out of questions. Does anybody else have questions?
Can I go have dinner, Tammy? Sorry.
You can. I guess we don't have any other questions.
Well,
I wanted to ask you. So next week is Labor Day. We're going to do this online. Sorry about that. Next weekend or next Monday is Labor Day. So
I'll be here.
Okay. I was just going to say, I'm willing to be here if you're willing to be here. So I guess we'll be here. So if you're in the U.S. and have nothing to do on Labor Day at 5 p.m. Pacific time, come join us. We'd love to see you.
And I want to tell you, it's really exciting to say that we are expanding. We're going to have programs in Florida. We're looking at programs in other parts of the country, because this issue is just underserved. It just is. Yes, can we raise our hand to ask a question? Sure. Someone has a question.
No, we don't do the hand raising. So the questions come through the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. So you can type in your yes. So there's a question. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A, because otherwise we tried it once and it was a disaster. So we just use the Q&A to ask questions. So
when we go in there,
there'll be more couples workshops beyond the next 2. Yes, we're planning on that.
Monthly.
Yes, but we have to see that they are filling along the way. So yes, but for the next 2 months they're booked. It's a limit of 4 couples per workshop. And Paul, had one a couple of weeks ago, and
he does it with a partner. So there's a couple running the workshop.
Yes, and but they're not a couple. But yes, they're two.
A therapeutic couple.
Yes, correct. And heard amazing results. So so please consider that. If you have questions, always reach out to us. So then the next one is not an addiction question. Would love if you'd adjusted your time so webinars are on Australian daytimes. So,
I'm going to let the dog in. You can tell them.
The webinars, tougher to do, although I'm trying to think. I can't remember what time 9:30 a.m. is our time. I'd have to check. I know that my evening is your morning. I don't know. So if the 9:30 a.m. Pacific time is an option, check the whole schedule. But we're adding the drop-in groups. Will have more, so there'll be more variety with the drop-in groups. The webinars are different. It takes two of us to do a webinar, so scheduling those is a little crazier.
I wanted to say something at this too. Oh, but I lost the question. Hold on a second. Is it in here? Hold on. What was the question, Tam? About
the question is not an addiction question. Would love it if you adjusted time so there's more webinars work for Australian daytime.
I wanted to tell you guys, well, first of all, just know that they're all recorded, so you can go back and check a lot of those things and listen. But I also want to say that I'm going to be in Australia. I am teaching in Sydney. I just got an invitation in just a couple of weeks. And so if you're interested in coming to visit or hear me, I will be speaking at the Aware conference in Sydney.
Correct.
And Tammy, again, you could probably type in information about it if you wanted to, but it's a porn addiction conference. It's kind of one of the first meetings of people really talking about the problems at a professional level of pornography on an international level. But I'm going to go visit Sydney and never been down under. So if anybody has suggestions on places to go or things to see, please let us know. And if you want to have a meeting or a greeting or something while I'm there, write Tammy a note and we'll see what we can do. So.
Yes, so September 21st in the Sydney area. It's not in downtown Sydney, but yeah, write to me and I will tell you more. So my husband and I are out of the 5-alarm crazy trauma portion of his essay. We kind of feel stagnant at this point. What's our next steps to consider? Background is we are 1 year out of D-Day, formal disclosure, both in respective programs, group, connecting while rebuilding.
Well, I guess the question is always, stage 2 is about intimacy. So how do you begin to grow your couple's intimacy? And that doesn't necessarily mean sex. How do you regain, by a year, if a couple's working on it, they should have started to really regain trust and a hope for the future, and some of the darkest parts are gone. But what kind of future are you going to build together that is on this, I think that and what is your sexual life going to be like? I mean, there's a lot of issues on the table about re-engaging intimacy and sexuality, and it has to be different than it was before. So I think there's a lot on the plate for you guys to do. Someone's asking a question.
Well, I'm going to, so there's sexual reintegration. Bill and Ginger Burkaw did a book about that on sexual reintegration, Burkaw, Bercaw. But they wrote a book and had a workbook for it. I don't remember all the details. It's been a few years since I looked at that. Pat Love wrote a book called, and she did a podcast with Dr. Rob, and it was called Hot Monogamy. And so there's lots of ways to do that. But Dr. Rob also mentioned, a sexologist, a sex therapist, can help, get you some pointers for moving in that direction as well.
Well, the problem is for a lot of sex addicts that we don't understand how to be intimate or have sex unless it's based on intensity. We don't know how to, unless it's a fresh body, a new image, a new experience, and it's heart pounding. And, if it's the same partner we've been seeing for 10 years, it's just, we don't know how to do that. And we tend to avoid sex. So reintegrating intimacy and sexuality in recovery is really important around a year. And I hope that that's something you guys are focusing on. Hey, Tammy, as always, what a gift to be here with you tonight. Thank you for everybody for coming. If you want to find me on Friday, I will be on intherooms.com. It is a more public website where we do sex, love, and addiction Q&A every Friday night at 6 p.m. California time. And we get about 140 people in the room. It's really a rock and rolling good time. I hope you join us on Fridays.
So just real quick, somebody asked about the cruise control, any of the drop-in groups. Please just check the calendar. I try to keep it updated so that we have accurate information. So because it's Labor Day, there's a couple of groups that won't be going next Monday, but I am trying to have those groups meet consistently each week when at the designated time, with the exception of holidays or some emergency. So. And
we've had a lot of people asking about a women's program, and there will be a women's program. We'll be starting one in one of the centers later in early in 2020, but I don't want to talk about where or when yet. But it's going to happen. We will have a women's program.
It's on the list.
We haven't forgotten you, ladies.
Okay.
Tammy,
thanks, Dr. Rob.
Thanks for your time.
Talk to you. Yeah, and we'll be here next week.
See you later. Bye, everybody.
Bye.